Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Mental Dimes College Football Podcast. I am Neville Triplett. I am with my co-host Tyler McDonough. You can catch all of our articles each week and every day at mentaldimes.com, your one-stop shop for all things sports. You can look at the fresh takes, the hot takes, and articles on all the sports, all the major sports, as well as if you're into betting, gambling, we've got some betting tips and things there as well. Uh, Please follow us, Mental Dimes, on Twitter at Mental Dimes. And for college football, we've got at Mental Dimes CFB for college football. So please follow us there. Follow and interact with me at NG Triplet. And T Mac Tyler is at TM Swish, in reference to his 3-point acumen as a basketball player in high school, golfing as well. And we always talked about draining threes and hitting off tees. That is Tyler McDonough. T-Mac, as he goes by, and I go by Trip. But please interact on this podcast. You can send us your comments. We will respond as best we can. And we hope to be here every week, every Wednesday, for your college football things. Tyler, you want to talk a little bit about our guest coming up?
Yeah, absolutely, Trip. Once again, looking forward to another great week of college football talk with you. We're going to have a good friend of mine, Earle, come on with us here in a few minutes. He's going to jump on. He's doing a little bit of ministry work right now. He's wrapping that up, so he'll jump on. He'll jump on with us here in a few minutes. I got the privilege to know Guy. I met his. I played college golf with his son Jeremiah. And Jeremiah's going to try to jump on with us as well with his dad. So really looking forward to talking to Guy. Guy's got a fantastic background. Played college football at Western Kentucky, and then I got to play in the NFL and the Canadian Football League for a few years, and now he's doing some ministry work. Got the chance also to be team chaplain with the University of Oklahoma, so he's a big Oklahoma fan, him and his son Jeremiah. So looking forward to talk a little Big 12, little SEC with them, see what their thoughts are, and really looking forward to catching up with those two guys right there.
Great. I went and looked at the website for his ministry, and it is Think Twice Ministries. I know he'll talk about that, but if you get a chance later, go check out that site. Very inspirational about he and his brother, how they got into this ministry. Talks about a message from their father before he passed away. So really an inspirational story. Look forward to hearing what he has to say. And one of the things I noticed, he played in the NFL, played college football, and his brother, who does this ministry with him, also played in the NFL as well. So obviously a very talented athletic family. And now the brothers have started this ministry that I think can help a lot of people. I am curious to get his thoughts on the Oklahoma Sooners this year, where he thinks they will wind up. Obviously, we talked about it last week. Tons of transition for lots of schools, but they lose Lincoln Riley. They lose two of their quarterbacks. So they get a new head coach in Venables. They bring in a new quarterback. And, of course, down the road, 2025, they're heading to the SEC, so that should be interesting. And then, obviously, their baseball team is still in the College World Series, so tons of stuff going on for the Oklahoma Sooners. So be anxious and interested to see what he has to say about all of that, and then, of course, hear about his ministries and what he has going on with that.
And just to piggyback off that a little bit, Trip, Guy's a great. He's a great football mind. He's been around football his whole life. Obviously having a fantastic career, and he's I believe, and I'll reiterate with when he jumps on with. I believe he's originally from Kansas. Had a great high school basketball career as well. So, like you said, a very athletic family, and got to go on and play college football and then in the NFL along with his brother, and then Jeremiah got to really befriend in college. And we're both playing college golf together. So a very athletic family. They're a great interview. I'm looking forward to it. They've got great personalities there, and I'm really looking forward to talking to them. But like you said, it's going to be real interesting to see how the Big 12 shakes up, with Oklahoma and Texas in their last few years here in the Big 12. And then we talked about this last week, those teams coming in, they're going to come in next year already. So, so they're going to cross over for a few years before Texas and Oklahoma officially leave. So it's going to be interesting to see that few years with an even bigger conference. So it'll be a real interesting topic to talk about, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Earle family has to say about all that.
All right. So joining us now will be Guy Earle's son, Jeremiah. We're bringing him in.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
What's going on, Jeremiah? My name is Neville Triplett. Obviously, you know T-Mac. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah.
Excited to have you.
T-Mac told me y'all going to be talking Sooners, so I am pumped and ready to go.
What's going on, my man? What you been up to?
Dude, I've been just trying to find time to work out and golf. Been spending a lot of time golfing because it's summer break. So just trying to get in shape.
Right.
Trip, you'll appreciate Jeremiah. He's a teacher and coach as well. So he's just like you. He's following the footsteps. But also joining us right now is the second member of the Earle family right here. We've got Guy jumping on with us. How are you boys doing today?
Hey, so can everyone hear me? I can hear you guys fine.
Yep.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. I'm in the middle of vacation Bible school. 300 kids, hot weather, messy church. That's where I'm at right now. But it's all good because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, glorifying God. So let's go.
Well, fantastic, Guy. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Neville Triplett. I taught and coached T-Mac in high school, and we've started writing and podcasting for Mental Dimes and focusing specifically on college football. And you will be our first guest, and he kind of talked about the road you've traveled from Western Kentucky to NFL to CFL, and I've done some research, really inspirational message. I looked at your website, Think Twice Ministries, and really anxious to see what you have for us today. But I thought we would start off with what, according to T-Mac, is near and dear to both your hearts, is the Oklahoma Sooners.
First, you said you coached T-Mac. So were you blessed to have him 7 years like Texas A&M and Commerce had him for? Every year I turn around, I'm like, this brother's still playing golf. Is he like on that 9-year plan or what?
Well, actually, we wish we could have had him for that long. I know basketball-wise, the highlight was our arch rival Liberty Hill and T-Mac lit them up for 38 one night, and they couldn't believe that. That was big.
Can I finally get some validation, Guy? You know, I know me and you've gone back and forth.
Yeah,
hey, I was telling Tripp a minute ago. I know you got some basketball background too up there in Kansas. You got that old school game right there.
Old school, but it gets better every year. Old school, but it gets better every year.
That's right.
You gotta remember though. My dad played against plumbers and firemen back in his day. So
okay, JJ Redick. Keep the noise to yourself.
But hey guys, yeah, thanks for jumping on with us and feel free to throw some shots at me. I can take it. But hey guys, Trip jump in as well. Whenever you're ready to ask any questions. But hey guys, Oklahoma, the big question, gonna be moving up here in a few years, heading out east to the SEC a little bit. What were y'all's initial thoughts when all that first came out that Oklahoma and Texas were gonna leave the Big 12 and head over to the SEC?
Go ahead, Jared.
Well, initially, I was a little taken back, especially with the playoff format being what it is right now with 4 teams only getting in. I think the best shot for Oklahoma was to continue just dominating the Big 12 like they have, continuing to win 10 games at worst per year. In a good year, winning 11, 12, making the playoff. Under the 14 format, I think that was our easiest path. But now, as time's gone on and these talk of expansions happening, 8-team, 12-team, I think moving to the SEC and putting a good ball club there, especially under Venables, I'm kind of liking it. If you want to be the best, you got to continue to play against the best. And being in the best conference in college football, I think, is the best thing moving forward for them.
So I'll add my sick sense to it. I will tell you this. I don't think it's a good move for college football. And I'm a huge Oklahoma fan. I loved us being in the Big 12, us against them. I think a lot of conferences and a lot of teams always view the SEC as the greatest gift known to mankind, but I think they're very top heavy. And I think outside of about 4 teams every year, everyone else looks like every other team in every other conference there is. I think it was a money move, which, money drives a lot of vehicles, a lot of programs. And so I think it definitely was a money move. And just to kind of validate what my son said, if the goalpost wasn't moving as far as the playoff and going 8 to 12, I would have said horrible move. But if it looks like it might go to 8, maybe eventually 12, which probably will settle it at 12, I think money will drive that as well. I think it's a great move for that reason, because the standard in the SEC, 8-4 and 9-3 at Texas and Oklahoma, will last about 3 years in the Big 12, and then they start looking for your replacements. 8-4, 9-3 in the SEC, they give you a pat on the back and a contract extension.
All right. So speaking of that, what are your thoughts on obviously Lincoln Riley moving on from Oklahoma to USC, Venables coming into Oklahoma? How do you think that's going to shape the Oklahoma Sooners going forward?
Well, initially I was, confused and angry with Lincoln. I went through the whole 5 stages of grief, and I've come across to the acceptance with it, and I get it. Lincoln inherited a great program from Bob Stoops. He inherited, he was given the keys to the car, and this thing was like a Ferrari, and it was ready to go. Now he's going to a situation in USC where he kind of gets to maybe build his own thing at an established brand already. It's not quite ready-made like it was when he got the Oklahoma job in 2016. But, I get the appeal of going to Southern California instead of living in Norman. I get all that. Where it's kind of hurt Oklahoma, again, transfer portal, Caleb Williams leaving, with a bunch of other offensive players. But getting Brett Venables as our hire, especially as we transition to the SEC, I think was massive, because at Clemson, he's used to recruiting against the big boys of Alabama, Georgia, LSU for those big-time defensive recruits. He was doing that every single year at Clemson. And I think moving to the SEC, that experience of having to recruit at that high level against the big boys, specifically on the defensive side of the football, and bringing in some of that culture change as we go to a more physical conference, I think it's going to just help us moving forward unexpectedly.
So I will say this, at first it was a shock the way it went about, 24 hours after getting beat by Oklahoma State. And you saw some things in the Oklahoma State game, it made you think, did he already have one foot out the door as fast as it happened with USC? But the moment that he was gone, my first thought went to, okay, is Venables going to come back? My son and I, we talked about it. We were in the car, actually, and we talked about it at length, that this is a great opportunity for Oklahoma to kind of reset themselves. They've always been a team that has relied on defense with Stoops. I think nowadays, the way offenses are built, you can find the next guru as better and quickly than you could find a guy that's suited for the defense. And to have a guy with his passion and his recruitment behind him, and then plug in Levy that's coming in from Ole Miss, being under Kiffin. He was a machine at Central Florida. I mean, I tell you what, it's going to be plug and play as far as the offense, and you're going to see a step up with our defense. And I just think Oklahoma is not going to miss a beat.
And I'll say this, and y'all can, stop me if you disagree, but I think Oklahoma, high-powered offense mixing with Brent Venables is, I mean, you look at the way college football, maybe outside the SEC, but hey, even the SEC is getting a little bit like this too. It's such a high-powered offensive game nowadays. And my guy, Mike Leach, back in the day at Texas, part of the reason, Lincoln Riley kind of kept it going at Oklahoma, and a lot of these other programs have really, adopted his philosophy of the maybe not so much the air raid anymore, but let's just put up a ton of points. How does Brent Venables, plugging into a very high powered offense that Lincoln Riley had kind of built and brought in? How does mixing with a great defensive mind like Brent Venables really help an Oklahoma program?
I think it starts with the recruitment. Like you could send out your DC to go out and recruit players. The players are going to go to a team. The mindset of the head coach, and everyone knew with Lincoln Riley that his team, and he's all about the offense, is great. But I think with Venables and his track record, number one, having built a championship caliber team defense with Oklahoma, and then taking that caliber, that mindset, going to Clemson and recruiting at a top level. We're not talking about just recruiting. We're talking about getting 5- and 4-star athletes go to Clemson and to stare down the Alabamas of the world every single year in the playoffs. Now that mindset with his passion now comes back to Oklahoma. Top players know what they're going to get. And so I think it's going to be defined in the recruitment, which every college coach, Kobe Smart from Georgia, he will tell you that. Every college coach, you're only as good as your recruitment. And I think it changes right there off the bat. Him recruiting top defensive players and getting those players to come to Oklahoma will change the way Oklahoma plays here on out.
And to piggyback on what my dad said, it is all about the recruiting. I think Kirby Smart might have had a quote after the Florida game where he said, you're not going to win games unless you have the talent to win those games. And some people might be worried that Oklahoma is going to fall off a little bit on offense because Lincoln Riley left. We brought in Jeff Lebby. We already got a 5-star quarterback back here in Denton Geyer in our backyard, ready to go to Oklahoma next year. And so, like my dad said, the recruiting, as long as it's still up to that level, and we know on the defensive side of the football, it's going to be that level with Brent Venables because he has the track record of getting those recruits and develop them into pro talent. A bunch of these 4 or 5-star guys, they could go anywhere and succeed, but those guys are thinking, how can you get me to the next level?
Yep.
And Venables has that track record of getting those guys there, especially if you're going to be in the SEC, which a lot of those defensive guys end up getting drafted if they're good enough. So,
right. And I have a question here, kind of ties into what you're saying with Venables. Does it appear that maybe the pendulum is starting to swing? Venables is getting this high-profile job. Obviously, Marcus Freeman, a defensive coordinator, gets the Notre Dame job. And then you look at not that he's a defensive coach, but you look at the job Pittman has done as an O-line coach at Arkansas, that some of these top-tier programs are maybe moving away from the offensive guru minds to looking at who can we bring in to either neutralize some of these offenses or when you mentioned recruiting, I know that's one of the things that and some of the research I did with Pittman at Arkansas is that everyone said this guy can recruit, he can recruit. Whereas I think in maybe a few years back, everybody kind of wanted the offensive guru who can come in and run and gun and that kind of thing. Do you think that maybe the pendulum is swinging back a little bit?
I definitely think that you're going to see programs going after, and I think Notre Dame is probably the one that probably highlights that thought process, is we want a guy who's going to be able to go out and recruit nationally. I think those bigger schools, they're thinking from California to New York, from Michigan to Dallas to Texas. They want to be a national pro brand, and so they're going to look more so for the recruitment rather than the X's and O's, because you get a guru like an offensive guy or a defensive guy, the X's and O's. I mean, you could put people in place, but I mean, the talent at the end of the day is going to win, and that's what they're thinking. Like, we need talent because the X's and the O's, they take care of themselves.
To your point about the pendulum swinging and it being kind of defensive guys that seem to be like getting the step up in the hires, this just might be my opinion, but it feels like a lot of teams have explode. Like it's very easy to find like explosive offense. It feels like nowadays with whether it be how the game's officiated or just like appeal over time to like trying to score more points and like the product of football and how it's been. How can we get more entertainment? How can we score more points? I think it might be a little bit easier to find a guy that can come in and just keep an offense humming, especially if you have just a couple dynamic athletes on offense, especially at quarterback. It's hard to have a bad offense if you have a good quarterback. So it's more rare to find a guy who can come in and establish a dominant or a competent, consistent defense. And given that it's more difficult to do, I think that's the reason the pendulum might be swinging. And it's like, all right, this guy's going to give us a top 25 defense every single year. And in the years where we have a great offense, we can compete for a national championship. And I think that's the mindset.
I would agree with that. And I think
Case in point, Georgia and Alabama. Their head coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I think that maybe has driven some of this up until this point, the offense and stuff. I mean, at least here in Texas, we all know that 7-on-7 is huge. And I mean, obviously that's really, your secondary gets a little work, but it's all about offense, throwing the ball, it's all you do, obviously 7-on-7, throwing the ball, catching the ball. And you see some of those things on Sports Center or highlights, things like that. Again, just emphasizing kind of the touchdowns, things like that. And sometimes I think that has driven fans and fan bases and probably alumni to really want to go chase that. Whereas now I think to y'all's point, people are starting to realize that if you can have as you said, Jeremiah, top 25 defense and a really good offense, and you're in a much better position than someone that can go out and score 50 points a game, but is maybe giving up 48 points a game.
That reminds me of me and my dad's favorite Sooner team. I think it was the 2018 Kyler Murray year where our defense gave up like 49-50 a game, and Kyler was having to bail us out every single night.
It was horrible.
Hey, how about my boy Mahomes versus Mayfield that one year? What was that? It was like
that was sick.
Oh my gosh, it was like 1,000 yards between the two of them, something like that. Oh man, but hey, we're talking to Guy Earle and Jeremiah Earle here on our College Football Mental Dimes podcast. Guy, of course, a Western Kentucky alum, NFL, CFL alum, and also Jeremiah right here, a former teammate of mine at Texas A&M Commerce. So there we go, baby. Hey, but I got to ask you guys, Guy, you come from from an era where loyalty being a big part, and then Jeremiah and I kind of ran through this a little bit, I think, in Commerce, even just with the golf program. But you run through you kind of in an era now where the transfer portal's blown up so much, and there's not as much loyalty anymore to programs, but it's almost and look, I understand kids got to look out for themselves, but there's not as much loyalty anymore, and I almost say that college athletics has turned into almost like free agency. With the less and less restrictions of the transfer portal. What are y'all's thoughts on the college football transfer portal with how easy it is to go from team to team, and then how easy it is even for coaches to get up and leave their contract, just like Lincoln did, just like that?
So I think you start with the coaches and how easy it was for coaches to go while under contract to be bought out of that contract and go coach another team for more money, but yet the players were held to their contract or their scholarship. And a little known fact about scholarships, it's not a 4-year scholarship. It's a year to year to year to year scholarship. So you get 4 1-year scholarships. And every year a team, now you have to do a lot to get out of that scholarship, but I always thought it was kind of funny how a coach is able to get out of his contract to go, but after that 1 year, if a kid wants to go somewhere else, that you're locked in, but you're told, hey, you're locked in for the next year. So that's a small fact. I think the transfer portal, I think it's going to be like a case by case. In some places, it works to a T. It works great. You have a kid at a school and his coach that recruited him leaves to another school, and now he's there, and a guy's coming in. He's going to bring his own recruits, and now he's like, "Well, I'm kind of lost in the fray." And then you get the kids who are chasing, and we haven't even touched on this, the NIL money, and so now you have this kind of free agency. The NIL is just a sacred word for, or being nice. It's more pay to play. But the transfer portal, I think the 1 year, allowing a kid to transfer one time, I don't think that's bad. I do think it's going to kind of work its way through the murky waters, and you'll see it start to calm down. I think they could put some boundaries on it, like limit it to like a specific time frame of when you can enter in or when you can enter out. And if that time elapsed, then you have to stay. I don't like the fact you could do it after spring ball, because people go after spring ball and they like, oh, I'm not going to run this team. I'm breaking. So I think there's a lot of maneuvering parts. We got to give it a couple of years to see what it really looks like.
Well, yeah, Jared, I'll let you jump in here a second. But a prime example of like what you're saying, guys, Tripp and I talked about this briefly last week, but Eli Ricks, who was a All-American, I'm not sure if the name rings a bell, but Eli Ricks, an All-American corner, at LSU last year, is already, LSU down year last year, just this offseason transferred to Alabama. So you seeing like that going from, rival to rival. And it's not like he's some scrub. I mean, he was an All-American at LSU, and he's going from LSU to Alabama, and it's just like that. I mean, no, very little restriction or anything. And and I'm sure LSU fans are ticked about that. They don't want to see something like that. But that's just a prime example.
And Nick Saban, he didn't say anything about that when he was calling out
Jimbo Fisher,
right? Jimbo, he didn't say anything about that, right? So he welcomes the players coming to his program, but he's going to call out other programs who are getting top players.
T-Mac, I feel like our relationship with the whole coaches leaving and transfer portal stuff is a little bit unique, considering that when we were there playing golf, my 3 years playing there, we went through 3 head coaches, a new head coach every single year, and it got even like worse after I stopped playing and you were there for your 8-year stretch.
Guy will appreciate that. I think, I went through about 8 coaches in 8 years.
And so I feel like allowing student athletes to transfer after, a coach leaves, that's only, I feel like, the right thing to do, because you go to a school, like, you fall in love with the program, fall in love with the coach, and then if that coach jumps ships, now what's the reason for you being there, in a sense? Like Caleb Williams, he was great for Oklahoma. I wish he would have stayed, but I understand why he left to USC. He came to Oklahoma to be in Lincoln Riley's offense and be coached under Lincoln Riley, who produced 2 number 1 draft picks. So I completely understand why he transferred and why he left. It's what he thinks is best for him. The issues that we get with the transfer portal, though, is, like you said, with the kid going from LSU to Alabama, because what we might run into is where you have the teams at the top of the food chain just poaching the best players from teams below them. I think we saw a little bit of that with the Pitt receiver. I'm sure he was lined up for some great NIL deals at Pitt, but he went over to USC to go play with Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley. So that's the trouble with the transfer portal, that I don't know how it's going to be solved, but that's something down the road I think can be a big problem, where if you are a coach and you're building something at a lower school and you're developing your players, are those players just going to be poached off by LSU and Alabama when they're juniors and seniors?
Well, I kind of think that it's one. I think that as time goes by, they will set some like a window, like I talked about, and they'll have to reel it in some. They'll have to reel in this NIL. It's very similar, in my opinion, to the way a lot of the schools before the transfer portal were poaching the JUCO players. Now, obviously, that's a different situation because they're not at 4-year universities, and a lot of times they're at these junior colleges to try to go on. But the same type of thing where some of the rich getting richer, they would go find the most explosive, most talented junior college players and stock their rosters with it. So this seems to be similar to that, with the rich getting richer, to your point, Jeremiah. And I think that there's got to be some regulations and some guidelines put in. And I think that there will be. I think it's like anything else. They come out with this idea and then realize all the issues with it. And then hopefully they'll dissect, this works well, this doesn't, let's fix this to make it as equitable as possible. Now, having said that, trusting the NCAA to do what's equitable and fair is kind of risky. I'm not sure that that's their intention.
Well,
but hopefully
the NCAA is on their last leg.
right. And
I think the NIL stuff will also sort itself out. I mean, because right now we're hearing like huge bags of cash just being thrown around to very specific players. And again, this is very early in the NIL process. So I feel like after a couple years, and after maybe we hear some horror stories about this player getting a lot of money and then not producing, I feel like it's going to be reeled in, because you got to also factor in, yeah, you want to spend this money to get recruits in, these 4 or 5-star players. But what about the guy on your roster that's already producing? Like, how do you balance taking care of him but also bringing in new guys? And so I feel like after a few years, that'll all get sorted out. Maybe after we hear some horror stories about money being allotted to players that don't produce or don't play.
I thought it was interesting. The head coach from Ohio State, a couple weeks ago, went to his athletic department.
Oh yeah.
Boosters, and said, we need $13 million to keep the players that we have on roster right now. I'm like 13. I almost felt like saying, wait. I pay you $10 million a year to coach those up.
Right.
$13 million to keep them. Like this, I was just crazy. He made that statement,
Yeah, that's unbelievable that's where we are in amateur athletics. So, well, I thought if you're up for it, I'd really like to talk about, or have you guys talk about your Think Twice Ministries. I was kind of perusing that website, and I told T-Mac before we got on, my dad was military. I grew up in Maryland. So at the time, this was late 70s, early 80s, I was at the time it was the Washington Redskins, now the Commanders. And obviously Darryl Green was the guy, fastest man in the NFL. And I was a diehard fan of the team and his. And when I read kind of your bio on there and talked about your conversation with Darryl Green, of course, I connected with that. But I'd love to hear kind of what you're doing with Think Twice Ministries and what led you to that, and what you're doing now with that, and kind of what message you have for us.
So what led me to Think Twice Ministries started with the conversation with Darryl Green, our first year with the Redskins, and he asked me a simple question that I didn't know the answer to, but I thought I did. And he said, "Guy, are you born again?" And I answered it by saying, "Yeah, I go to church." And he simply looked at me and says, "I didn't ask you what church you go to. I asked you if you were born again." Didn't know what the answer meant. Didn't know what the question meant. Had no answer to it. And so that spurred something in me, and to where probably 6 weeks after being asked that question, when I was home during the off season, found myself at a church, and I was able to answer the question one Friday night in January. I asked Jesus Christ to be my Lord and Savior, and then I found out that's what it means to be born again, to acknowledge Christ as your Savior, which leads to a ministry. Now I'm a pastor on staff at Grace Point Church, but I have a ministry with my identical twin brother who also played professional football. He was actually a draft choice by the Cincinnati Bengals. He played with the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's when they had Joe Montana and Marcus Allen.
Wow.
Played with the Atlanta Falcons, the St. Louis Rams, and the New England Patriots. We always tell people he played with the Rams and he played with the Patriots when they weren't the Rams and the Patriots. When they were the Lambs and whatever you want to call them, the no good Patriots. And then so he and I used to be a part of a ministry called Sports World, where former professional athletes would go into the schools and share their personal experience, testimony, life experiences, and personal faith story in a public school setting. He and I was asked to do a similar engagement one night, and we decided that we were going to try to tag team it. But I would talk for about 2 or 3 minutes, and he would talk, and we just kind of intertwined our message for about 30 minutes, and we did it, and it just clicked. And from that point on, he and I have been ministering together for the last 15 years. In the last 10 years, that ministry has developed into more of a prison ministry, where we go into the prisons around the country and we offer a simple message to prisoners and to inmates: is, do you have a belief system that allows you to be different when you have your second, third, fourth, or fifth chance? Because the belief system is more than just words. It has to have action behind it. And so we challenge the inmates with a positive message of hope, but we also say, don't let your failure, don't let it freeze you. Let your faith propel you. And so a lot of times people get frozen in a moment because they failed, whatever stage it may be, whether it's sports or in life. Failure has a tendency to freeze people, and it keeps them from moving forward. And so we want these inmates to know that with a second chance or a third chance, a message of hope, let your faith propel you on to great things that God created you to be.
Awesome. Very inspirational, awesome message, which I think, as you said, it can apply to, particularly the resonates with me is don't let your failure freeze you. I think we can probably all relate to something didn't go our way, or at the time maybe felt like a catastrophic failure, and you have a choice to either let that define you or learn from that to move on. So I think that's a fantastic message. Tyler had told me that you also, and I don't know if you're still doing this or not, but had been a chaplain or minister to the Oklahoma football team.
So that's where we got our love. And that's where I introduced my son to what real football looks like. So
we couldn't find any at the schools in Texas.
Yeah.
I haven't been introduced yet in Lubbock, so.
Yeah. So I took him to several of the chapels that had an opportunity. So he's met the coaches that were at time and fell in love with Oklahoma. And I have a great story. I have to share this story because I tell it.
Please do.
So it was when Adrian Peterson was playing for Oklahoma, and they were playing down in College Station, Texas A&M. And so I got the call that they needed someone to come in. And so we drove down as a family. And that's where my wife goes to school. She went to school. And so we decided to go down early. I was gonna speak to the football team. And then we had all afternoon because the game was in the evening. And we were gonna go tour the campus and all the spots where my wife, when she was a student there. And so we finally get to the game. And of course, since we're invited by Oklahoma, so we gotta sit with the fans for Oklahoma is. And so those are not great seats when you go to the opposing team stadium. And so they're in the corner, far left or far right corner of the end zone. And so we're way away from everyone. And my wife's giving me the business. She's telling me when I was a student here, I was standing right above the 12th, the number 12 up there. And I would stand right there. We had great seats. Now that we're stuck in the corner. And I kept on trying to remind her that these are Oklahoma seats. We're here to cheer on Oklahoma. And so halfway through warm-ups, a guy comes and sits right next to me. And his name is Barry Switzer. And so obviously being an Oklahoma fan, I introduced my son to Barry Switzer, and one of the greatest college football coaches ever. He had just finished up, coaching with the Cowboys, and we're checking out as many rings that he has on his hand, and we're striking up a conversation. A couple minutes later, another guy comes and sits in front of him. And so Barry introduces me to him. It's Billy Sims, one of the greatest Oklahoma running backs of all time. And then a few minutes later, a lady comes and she sits on the left side of my wife, and she's trying to get my attention. And she finally gets my attention. She goes, did you speak to the team today? And I said, yes. And she goes, man, my husband came up to the room afterwards and said, you did a great job. It was Mrs. Stoops. He just raved about the message that you gave to the players. And thank you for encouraging and speaking to our boys. And so then that conversation ended. I looked at my wife and I said, Barry Switzer, Billy Sims, the wife's head coach. These are some damn good seats.
I heard a story one time. I think it was I saw it on TV. It was Barry Switzer talking, and it was he was talking to his team about they were scouting Oklahoma State. I believe it was Oklahoma State, and when Thurman Thomas was playing there, And of course, he had done so well, and he told his team, "Well, you better hope, as good as Thurman Thomas is, that he does not get hurt, because their backup running back, you do not want to see him." And that was, of course, Barry Sanders.
That's a,
So I always thought that was I got a kick out of that.
yeah, that is a great story.
Yeah.
Jeremiah and I, in the off season or during bowl season, we were chatting about how much of a cool move Bob Stoops got to be royalty there in Norman. I mean that's incredible, coming out of retirement just to coach the bowl game. I mean, that is just like
that's some legendary stuff.
Yeah,
legendary.
Nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is doing that.
Yeah,
and the respect that Oklahoma's got for him, the mutual respect to just say, hey, yeah, Bob, you can come off the TV set and come coach us for a bowl game. We don't mind that. That's pretty cool right there.
Yeah, I was convinced that he was going to go back to coaching. I thought, well, maybe this is he's easing back into it, but no. I mean, yeah, you're exactly right.
It also talks about his love for the university. How many other coaches, when they leave a university, are they going back and they're going to coach a bowl game?
Right.
A meaningless bowl game, but for him, it wasn't meaningless. And he got those players to buy into that game. It was awesome. You know what I'm saying?
I think you'll appreciate this, T-Mac. I would compare the Oklahoma Sooners, and we love doing this. I know we love comparing things across sports, but Oklahoma Sooners are like the Spurs, a little bit of college football, where it's like the model of culture and consistency. Because, look across the last 75 years of college football, the Sooners have only been bad for like 6-7 year stretch in the 90s. Outside of that, they're always competing for conference and national championships.
Oh yeah.
So in terms of like having an established like culture when you walk through the door, very Spurs-esque.
Yeah, you've got the coaching trees. You got the Oklahoma. Just the coaches throughout all college football, throughout football in general. Have all grow from that Oklahoma football tree. Look at all the players buying in, and look. You can roast my Lubbock all you want. It's rightfully so. Lubbock's not the greatest place, but Norman, Oklahoma, maybe not the sexiest name going to Oklahoma. San Antonio is the same way. The Spurs like that, but you get someone, when you've got a culture like that built there. Players want to go play, for that program, want to go play for that, for Lincoln Riley, for Bob Stoops, for Brent Venables. You just list off the names right there. Those guys want to go. They buy into the program because it's such a historical and great program.
Unfortunately, you can say the same thing about Texas football and New York Knicks basketball. High-profile names, not a lot of wins behind it.
Well, the University of Texas is interesting because, I guess because it's so high profile, but I don't know. If you're a coach, why you want to go there? You're going to get 2 to 3 years, and then they're going to replace you. No matter how good you are, sometimes it takes time to build your culture, to install your system, and they've got such deep pockets that sometimes I think their answer is just throw more money at the next guy rather than, do the research, bring in somebody who's going to fit that culture, who can build and who's going to be around. They go through coaches very quickly, and it's
they fired a guy who went 8-4.
What's that?
They fired a guy who went 8-4.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Sark is the answer. Sark to me is more of a kind of Hollywood big name guy, and I just don't see him wanting to make his roots in Texas. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would agree with that. He probably wants to get back out to, UCLA, USC, probably a Pac-12 guy, anyway, where it came from. And
yeah,
but we'll see.
Hey guys, Jeremiah, Guy, appreciate you guys jumping on. Y'all got a tight schedule, but I appreciate you guys jumping on with us. Y'all are more than welcome to jump on with Trip whenever you guys want. But thank you guys for jumping on. Of course, Guy, former college football, NFL player. We appreciate you having on and some great insight. And then Jeremiah, of course, a great friend of mine, college teammate. So great insight. And we really appreciate you guys. And like I said, y'all are more than welcome to jump on whenever you'd like.
Hey, Tyler.
Enjoyed it.
Tyler, before we jump off, any U.S. Open takes? Last week's U.S. Open.
Come on, man. Well, we lost Brian Harmon in the rough there about on day 2. So
the Amber Alert is still out on Brian Harmon.
We lost the child who qualified for the U.S. Open. There was an Amber Alert out on him.
How's he going to compete in the drive, chip, and putt now?
Augusta's going to have to go find him. But hey, I'll say this. That was one of the best U.S. Opens we've gotten in a while. I don't think I heard one complaint all week from any of the players or anything about the course. Brookline's got so much history, and of course, me being the golf genius I am, bet on Matt Fitzpatrick before the week started, so I came out a happy man after the week was over.
That was a great tournament. We enjoyed it. Hey, it was so much. The mood changed in our house on Sunday afternoon when it was like we thought Scheffler was running away with it. Jeremiah was like, "Man, our day's ruined." Next thing you know, like 30 minutes later, we got like 3 guys bunched in, and they're going back and forth, and then coming down to the last play. It was.
Zalatoris is going to get one. He's going to get one.
He's got to.
But we appreciate you guys jumping on. We'll talk some golf. I'll come up to the Metroplex. Definitely come see you guys one of these days. But thank you, boys, for jumping on with us.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
You guys. You guys have a good one.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Right.
All right. Well, T-Mac, great guest. Certainly appreciate you getting that going. A really inspirational message from Guy, and really neat to have he and his son on talking about Oklahoma football as well as his ministry. So great job with that guest.
Thanks, Trip. It was a great week, and those guys, they'll like I said, they can talk. They've got great football minds right there, and we'll definitely have to keep them on the radar. I'll have to bring them back on, but it was a great week all in all. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Big 12 pans out and how the SEC pans out, how it's going to look right there. And gosh, we got to be under 75 days now. It's
around 70 days. I'm excited for it. Obviously, down here in Texas, we got high school football will be ramping up as well, and that's big down here. So, best time of years is coming up. So, as always, for those of you, make sure you check out our sister podcast, which is Mental Dimes, the NCAA men's basketball. That is Thursday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, so 10 p.m. Central time. Of course, you can catch their podcast, our podcast, wherever you Spotify, Apple, those will be up there if you can't catch them live. We hope to be back next Wednesday talking college football, possibly breaking down the SEC or possibly a guest. And if so, we will announce that. Thank you guys so much again. Go check out Mental Dimes, mentaldimes.com. You can, as I said earlier, you can follow us on Twitter at Mental Dimes CFB. I'm at NG Triplet, at TM Swish. Look at this. We got this banner going down there for you there. At mentaldimes.com. Check that out. Interact with us. Let us know what you think. Please like, retweet, share, whatever it is you can do to help us. And we will see you next week, guys. Thank you so much.
Salute.